You finish a standard supermarket sandwich. It has been perhaps 20 minutes. You are not full, yet you feel heavy. A specific dull lethargy begins to creep into the front of the skull. The stomach expands, not with satisfaction, but with a pressurized bloat that pushes against the belt. You feel tired. You feel inflamed. You assume this is the price of eating carbohydrates. You assume this is the natural consequence of aging. You have been told that wheat is the enemy, that gluten is a poison, and that the human body was never designed to process grains. You have been lied to. Consider the medieval peasant. The year is 1250 AD. This peasant does not have a concept of a balanced diet. This peasant does not have access to superfoods, protein powders, or multivitamins. This peasant relies on a single fuel source for 80% of caloric intake. Bread, coarse, dark, heavy rye, and wheat bread. Historical records from manors across England and France confirm that an adult male field worker consumed between 1.5 and 2 kilograms of bread every single day. That is the equivalent of eating 4 entire modern loaves of sliced white bread every single day for a lifetime. If modern diet culture is correct, the medieval peasant should be dead. The medieval peasant should be morbidly obese, diabetic, and crippled by intestinal inflammation. The medieval peasant should be rolling on the dirt floor of the cottage in agony. But the medieval peasant is not. Skeletal analysis of rural populations from the high Middle Ages reveals people with robust bone density and teeth that, while worn down by grit, show remarkably little decay compared to modern sugar addicts. They worked from sunrise to sunset. They built cathedrals with hand tools. They marched to crusades. They ran on bread. So here is the uncomfortable question. How could a civilization with no electricity, no refrigeration, no antibiotics, and no understanding of germ theory produce a staple food that fueled empires, while our hyper-advanced, sterile, stainless steel food industry produces a loaf that makes you sick? The answer is not in the grain. The wheat has changed, yes, but the wheat is not the assassin. The assassin is time. We have destroyed the staff of life because we were impatient. We have replaced a biological process that requires 24 hours with a chemical assault that takes 45 minutes. We have traded digestion for fluffiness. We have traded nutrition for shelf life. You are not suffering from gluten intolerance. You are suffering from a toxicity of speed. To understand why the supermarket loaf is destroying the gut, we must look at the invention that killed bread, the Chorleywood bread process. Developed in 1961 by the British Baking Industries Research Association, this process was hailed as a triumph of efficiency. It was designed to do one thing: produce the maximum volume of bread from the minimum amount of low-protein wheat in the shortest possible time. In a traditional medieval bakery, the dough is mixed gently by hand or by slow wooden troughs. In the Chorleywood process, the dough is subjected to high-speed mechanical mixing. This is not mixing. This is violence. The blades spin so fast that the mixer requires a cooling jacket to prevent the dough from cooking itself due to friction. This intense energy forces air into the structure, allowing the use of lower-quality grain. But the mechanical violence is not enough. To bypass the natural aging of flour, the modern factory must add ascorbic acid as an oxidizer. To keep the bread soft for weeks, the factory adds emulsifiers like datum, diacetyl tartaric acid, esters of mono, and diglycerides. To prevent the bread from turning into a mold colony within 2 days, the factory adds calcium propionate. But the greatest crime of the Chorleywood process is the yeast. The modern packet of instant yeast, or baker's yeast, is a monoculture. It is a single strain of fungus known as Saccharomyces cerevisiae. This organism is a specialist. It has been bred in laboratories for one purpose: rapid gas production. It eats sugar and burps carbon dioxide. That is it. It puffs up the dough like a balloon in under an hour. It creates the illusion of bread. It creates a soft, white, airy structure that looks like food and smells like food. But the wheat in that structure is effectively raw. The medieval peasant did not use a packet of Saccharomyces cerevisiae. The medieval peasant did not have a laboratory. The medieval peasant had a wooden bowl, water, and the invisible biology of the air. When the medieval peasant mixed flour and water and let it sit in the cool corner of the cottage for a day, something entirely different happened. A war took place in the dough. This was not just yeast. This was a complex, chaotic ecosystem. This brings us to the sourdough paradox. The bread of the past was not just food, it was a pre-digested biological product. When you eat modern bread, your stomach is the first vessel to attempt to break down the complex proteins and anti-nutrients found in the grain. Your stomach is overwhelmed. When the medieval peasant ate bread, the stomach was the second vessel. The first vessel was the mixing trough. The bacteria had already done the hard work. The modern industrial baker looks at a loaf of bread as a chemical structure to be inflated. The medieval baker looked at a loaf of bread as a living thing to be nurtured. We have forgotten that grain, in its natural state, does not want to be eaten. Grain is a seed. It is designed to survive in the soil until spring. It is protected by chemical armor. It is locked down with defensive compounds designed to prevent digestion. When we grind that seed and bake it instantly with fast yeast, we are eating the armor. We are ingesting the defense mechanisms of the plant, and then we wonder why our bodies fight back. We wonder why we feel inflammation. We are eating a biological weapon that we failed to disarm. The medieval peasant disarmed the weapon every single day without ever knowing the word molecule. Let us place the grain of wheat under the microscope. To the modern industrialist, the wheat berry is a unit of profit. To the biologist, the wheat berry is a fortress. The seed does not exist to feed the human population. The seed exists to propagate the species. To ensure the seed survives the winter and sprouts in the spring, nature has encased the nutrients within a chemical vault. This vault is locked by a compound called phytic acid. Phytic acid is an anti-nutrient. Phytic acid is a chelator. This molecule moves through the human digestive tract like a magnet. Phytic acid binds to essential minerals, calcium, magnesium, iron, and zinc. Phytic acid clamps onto these minerals and refuses to let go. When the human consumes unfermented grain, the human is not absorbing these minerals. The human is excreting these minerals. The phytic acid steals the nutrients from the food and carries the nutrients out of the body. You can eat 6 slices of whole wheat industrial bread, labeled fortified with iron, and absorb almost none of the iron. The vault remains locked. The modern factory ignores the vault. The Chorleywood process does not care about phytic acid. The yeast Saccharomyces cerevisiae works too fast to solve the puzzle. The yeast inflates the dough in 45 minutes. 45 minutes is not enough time to pick the lock. The modern consumer eats the bread. The modern consumer eats the phytic acid. The modern consumer suffers from mineral deficiencies despite consuming excess calories. The body perceives the food, but the body cannot access the fuel. The body is starving on a full stomach. Now, look at the wooden trough of the year 1250. The medieval peasant does not know what phytic acid is. The medieval peasant only knows that if the dough is not left to sour, the bread tastes flat and sits heavy in the belly like a stone. The medieval peasant relies on the leaven. The leaven is the mother dough. The leaven is a lump of fermented dough saved from the previous day's baking. This lump is not a sterile ingredient. This lump is a biological weapon. The leaven contains wild yeast, yes, but the wild yeast is outnumbered. For every single yeast cell in the leaven, there are 100 cells of lactobacillus. Lactobacillus is the hero of this story. Lactobacillus is a lactic acid bacteria. When the peasant mixes water, flour, and the leaven into the trough, the lactobacillus begins to feed on the maltose in the grain. As the bacteria feeds, the bacteria produces a byproduct, lactic acid. This is the key. Over a period of 12, 18, or 24 hours, the lactobacillus slowly acidifies the dough. The pH level drops. The dough becomes sour. This acidity is not a flaw. The acidity is the signal. When the acidity of the dough reaches a pH of roughly 4.5, a dormant enzyme in the wheat is triggered. This enzyme is called phytase. Phytase is the key to the vault. Phytase wakes up only in an acidic environment. Once activated, phytase attacks the phytic acid. Phytase breaks the bonds holding the minerals hostage. The lock clicks open. The zinc is released. The iron is released. The magnesium is released. The bread transforms from a mineral thief into a mineral source. The modern loaf has no lactobacillus. The modern loaf has no acidity. The modern loaf has no active phytase. The modern loaf is a closed vault. The medieval loaf, through the simple patience of time, is an open treasure chest. But the miracle of the medieval trough extends beyond minerals. We must speak of gluten. Gluten is a protein matrix. Imagine gluten as a complex web of rubber bands. This web traps the gas bubbles, allowing the bread to rise. In the modern factory, the machines beat the dough violently to develop this web instantly. The result is a strong gluten network. This network is tough. This network is resilient. When this strong gluten hits the human stomach, the stomach enzymes struggle to cut through the rubber bands. The gluten remains intact. The gluten travels to the intestine. The immune system sees this undigested protein structure as an invader. The immune system attacks. The result is inflammation, bloating, and the sensation of being poisoned. The medieval peasant did not eat strong gluten. During the long fermentation of the Middle Ages, the lactobacillus and the wild yeast do not just sit there. They produce proteolytic enzymes. These enzymes are protein cutters. Over the course of 18 hours, these enzymes slowly snip the rubber bands of the gluten network. They do not destroy the gluten completely. The bread still rises, but they degrade the gluten. They soften the gluten. They break the long, difficult peptide chains into shorter, manageable amino acids. This is pre-digestion. The medieval baker is performing the first stage of digestion in the bowl, so the human stomach does not have to do it. By the time the medieval loaf enters the oven, the heavy lifting is done. The chemical armor is stripped away. The proteins are dismantled. The minerals are unlocked. The modern consumer eats bread that is biologically hard. The medieval peasant ate bread that was biologically soft, even if the crust was hard enough to break a tooth. The texture of the crust matters nothing to the stomach. The chemistry of the crumb matters everything. We have traded a complex, symbiotic fermentation that took 24 hours for a monoculture gas pump that takes 1 hour. We saved time, but we lost the ability to eat the food. We are not allergic to bread. We are allergic to the industrial process that creates it. This is not romantic nostalgia. This is quantifiable data. The divide between the medieval trough and the modern mixer has been measured in clinical trials. In a landmark study conducted by the University of Bari in Italy, researchers compared the effects of standard yeast fermentation versus long ferment sourdough on wheat flour. The results were absolute. The sourdough fermentation, driven by the lactobacillus bacteria, was found to reduce the concentration of gluten peptides to such a significant degree that the resulting bread was tolerated by patients with subclinical gluten sensitivities. The researchers concluded that the 24-hour fermentation process effectively hydrolyzed the toxic proteins that the modern gut cannot handle. Archaeology backs the biology. Excavations of medieval communal bakehouses across Europe reveal a logistical reality that accidentally saved lives. In many villages, the oven was not in the home. The oven was a central, feudal monopoly. A peasant family would mix their dough at home in a wooden trough, but they had to wait their turn to bake. Sometimes they waited hours. Sometimes they waited a full day. The dough sat. The dough fermented. The dough digested itself while the peasant argued with the baker about the milling tax. This bureaucratic delay was the greatest health insurance of the Middle Ages. The bread that entered the oven was thoroughly processed by nature. So, how do you reclaim this lost technology? The industry wants you to believe that making sourdough is difficult. They want you to believe it requires a culinary degree or a sterilized laboratory. This is a lie designed to keep you in the supermarket aisle. You need 2 ingredients: flour, water. You do not need to buy yeast. Yeast is everywhere. It is on your skin. It is on the flour dust. It is in the air you are breathing right now. To build a medieval leaven, you simply mix equal parts flour and water in a jar. You let it sit. You wait. On day 1, it will do nothing. On day 2, it will smell strange. By day 4, it will bubble. By day 7, you will see the rise and fall of a living civilization. You have captured the wild biology of your specific location. You have created a stomach outside of your body. Once you have the leaven, the process is simple. Mix your flour and water. Add the leaven. And then, do nothing. Do not rush. Let the bowl sit on the counter for 4 hours. Then, put it in the cold. The modern refrigerator is the perfect imitation of the medieval root cellar. Leave the dough in the cold for 12 hours, 18 hours, even 24 hours. The cold slows down the yeast, stopping the bread from over-rising, but it does not stop the lactobacillus. The bacteria keeps working. The bacteria keeps degrading the gluten. The bacteria keeps unlocking the minerals. The longer you wait, the healthier the bread becomes. Do the math. A bag of high-quality unbleached flour costs pennies per serving. A loaf of artisan sourdough at a hipster bakery costs $8. A loaf of plastic industrial white bread costs your long-term health. When you bake the medieval way, you destroy the profit margin of the factory. You exit the system. This is the philosophical crossroads. The modern world tells you that technology means speed. It tells you that progress means doing things faster. But in the case of the human body, speed is a poison. The medieval baker was not a primitive fool. He was a master of applied physics and biology, even if he did not have the words to describe it. He understood that good things, lasting things, cannot be forced. You have a choice. You can continue to be a consumer, eating the foam produced by a machine that views your digestion as an irrelevant variable. Or you can become a craftsman. You can reclaim the knowledge that kept your ancestors alive. You can take back the staff of life, buy the flour, capture the air, wait for the bubbles, and never eat raw bread again.